Their love story was beautiful until it wasn't. It began the way most unforgettable things do, quietly, without warning, slipping into their lives as if it had always been meant to be there. When Amara Kingsley first met Noah Whitmore, she had no idea that the man standing in front of her would one day become both her greatest joy and her deepest wound. At the time, he was just another stranger with a calm smile and eyes that seemed to look past her defenses, straight into places she kept carefully guarded. Before we continue, please like, comment, and subscribe and tell us where they are watching from, because stories like this grow stronger when they're shared, and someone out there might need to hear this one tonight. Amara had always believed in control. She believed that if you worked hard enough, stayed careful enough, and loved cautiously enough, life would reward you with stability. Raised in a modest but disciplined household, she learned early that emotions were luxuries you indulged in only after responsibility had been satisfied. Love, to her, was something fragile, beautiful, yes, but dangerous if handled recklessly. So she built her life like a fortress, brick by brick, routine by routine. Noah was the opposite. He believed life was meant to be felt, not managed. He laughed easily, spoke freely, and carried himself with a confidence that didn't feel arrogant, just assured. He wasn't careless, far from it, but he trusted people in a way Amara found both admirable and terrifying. Where she planned, he flowed. Where she hesitated, he stepped forward. They met on an ordinary afternoon in Crestfall City, inside a small bookstore tucked between a cafe and a tailor's shop. Amara had gone in to escape the heat and kill time before a meeting. Noah had gone in because he liked the smell of old books and quiet places where the world slowed down. Their first conversation was accidental. Both reached for the same novel at the same time. "Sorry," Amara said quickly, pulling her hand back. "No, my fault," Noah replied, smiling as if he genuinely meant it. "You can have it." She shook her head. "You were here first." He studied her for a moment, then laughed softly. "How about we both lose and pick something else?" She almost smiled, but caught herself. That should have been the end of it. A polite exchange. Two strangers returning to their separate lives. But something lingered. A glance held too long. A feeling neither of them could immediately explain. They ran into each other again the next week. Same bookstore. Same aisle. This time, Noah didn't pretend it was coincidence. "Either this place has incredible taste in customers," he said, "or the universe is being a little obvious." Amara raised an eyebrow. "You believe in that sort of thing?" "I believe in paying attention," he replied. That answer stayed with her long after she left. What followed was not fireworks, not some dramatic whirlwind romance. It was something quieter. Conversations that stretched longer than planned. Walks that turned into hours. Text messages that began as polite check-ins and slowly became the highlight of their days. Noah listened to Amara in a way few people ever had. He didn't interrupt her careful explanations or rush her guarded confessions. He let her speak, let her pause, let her retreat when she needed to. And somehow, without pushing, he made her feel safe enough to step forward again. Amara, in turn, grounded Noah. She brought structure to his dreams, helped him see paths where he'd only seen possibilities. She challenged him, questioned him, and refused to let him drift away from commitments. Where others admired his charm, she respected his potential. They balanced each other. Friends noticed it before they did. The way Noah softened around her. The way Amara's walls lowered in his presence. The way laughter came easier, and silence felt comfortable instead of awkward. When Noah finally asked her to be his girlfriend, it wasn't with a grand gesture. No crowd. No spectacle. "Amara," he said one evening as they sat on a park bench, the city lights flickering in the distance. "I don't want to rush you. But I don't want to pretend I don't feel this either. I want to choose you properly. And I'd like to know if you'd choose me too." She didn't answer immediately. Old fears whispered in her ear. Love changes people. Love makes you vulnerable. Love takes things away as easily as it gives. But when she looked at him, really looked, she saw patience instead of pressure, sincerity instead of entitlement. "Yes," she said quietly. And just like that, her carefully controlled life shifted. The early months were golden. They learned each other in gentle layers. Noah learned that Amara drank her tea without sugar and hated being rushed in the mornings. Amara learned that Noah hummed absent-mindedly when he was thinking and always called his mother on Sundays, no matter how busy he was. They built rituals, Friday dinners, long evening walks, shared playlists, private jokes no one else understood. Love, for them, became a language spoken fluently between two people who had taken the time to listen. For the first time in her life, Amara imagined a future that included someone else without fear tightening her chest. But love, when it grows, also attracts shadows. Noah's world was wider than Amara initially realized. His family, though outwardly polite, carried expectations that weighed heavily on him. His mother, Ruth Whitmore, was a woman who believed love should look impressive from the outside: status, success, appearances carefully maintained. Amara, with her quiet confidence and unassuming background, didn't fit the picture Ruth had imagined for her son. At first, the disapproval was subtle. Backhanded compliments. Questions disguised as concern. "She seems simple," Ruth once said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "But I suppose that can be charming." Noah brushed it off. "She's not simple. She's thoughtful." Ruth only nodded. Amara noticed the tension but chose not to confront it. She told herself love was between two people, not families. She believed Noah when he said it didn't matter. And for a while it didn't. As their relationship deepened, Noah began to talk about bigger plans, moving in together, building something lasting. Amara hesitated, not because she didn't love him, but because commitment still scared her. "I just need time," she said one night. "Not because I doubt us. Because I don't want to do this halfway." He kissed her forehead. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." She believed him. But life has a way of testing promises. The pressure from Noah's family increased. Conversations turned into arguments. Expectations turned into ultimatums. He began to carry stress home with him, trying not to let it spill into their time together. But Amara felt it anyway. She started to notice small changes. Delayed replies. Canceled plans. A distant look in his eyes when he thought she wasn't watching. "Are you okay?" she asked one evening. "I'm fine," he said quickly. Too quickly. She wanted to press further, but fear held her back. Fear that pushing would make her the burden Ruth already painted her to be. Fear that asking for reassurance would make her seem weak. So she stayed quiet. And silence, left unattended, grows loud. The first Real crack appeared on a rainy night when Noah missed an important dinner she had planned. She waited, phone in hand, food growing cold, hope slowly draining. When he finally arrived hours later, soaked and exhausted, apologies tumbled out of him. But so did frustration. "I can't keep disappointing everyone," he said, running a hand through his hair. "My family, my work. I feel like I'm being pulled apart." Amara swallowed her hurt. "I'm not everyone. I'm just asking to be considered." His silence in response hurt more than any argument. That night, they slept back to back for the first time. Neither of them realized it then, but something had shifted. Love was still there, strong, undeniable. But now it shared space with doubt. And doubt, once invited in, rarely leaves quietly. Amara began to feel like she was slowly losing the man she had fallen in love with. Not to another woman, but to expectations, pressure, and a version of life she was never meant to fit into. Noah, torn between loyalty and love, began to feel like no matter what he chose, he would fail someone. They were still together. Still smiling in public. Still saying, "I love you." But underneath it all, the beautiful love story had begun to fracture. And neither of them yet understood how painful the break would become. After that rainy night, things between Amara Kingsley and Noah Whitmore didn't collapse all at once. Instead, they frayed, thread by thread, moment by moment, until even the strongest memories began to feel fragile in her hands. Amara noticed it first in the silences. Noah still showed up. He still held her hand. He still kissed her goodbye in the mornings. But the warmth that once lived effortlessly between them now required effort. Conversations became careful. Laughter felt forced. They spoke around problems instead of through them. She told herself it was temporary. Stress passes. Pressure eases. Love endures. But love, she was learning, doesn't survive on hope alone. Noah's family demands intensified. His mother's expectations hardened into something immovable. Ruth Whitmore had begun inviting Noah to events without Amara, framing it as convenience, not exclusion. "It's just business people," Ruth would say smoothly. "You wouldn't enjoy it anyway." At first, Noah declined. Then he compromised. Then slowly, he stopped mentioning the invitations at all. Amara found out by accident. Overheard conversations, social media posts, passing comments from mutual acquaintances. Each discovery felt like a small betrayal, not because he went, but because he didn't tell her. When she finally confronted him, her voice shook despite her efforts to keep it steady. "Why didn't you just say something?" she asked. "I'm not asking to be invited everywhere. I'm asking to be included in your truth." Noah sighed heavily. Because every time I choose you, I have to fight. And I'm tired, Amara. Those words lodged deep in her chest. She hadn't realized loving her felt like a battle to him. The distance grew. Amara began retreating into herself, returning to the emotional self-sufficiency she had mastered long before Noah entered her life. She worked longer hours, canceled plans first so she wouldn't have to feel rejected later, and stopped sharing the small details of her day that once brought him joy. Noah noticed, but instead of addressing it, he interpreted her withdrawal as proof that his fears were valid, that loving her meant losing everything else. They were both wrong. One evening, a confrontation finally exploded between them, raw and unfiltered. "You're already halfway gone," Amara said, tears streaking down her face. "I can feel it." "I'm still here," Noah snapped. "Isn't that enough?" "No," she replied. "Not when you're here in body and absent everywhere else." The argument spiraled, old wounds resurfacing, words sharper than intended, defenses raised too late. They said things they couldn't immediately take back. "I feel like I'm never enough for you," Noah admitted, voice breaking. "And I feel like I'm the only one trying to hold us together," Amara replied. Silence followed, heavy and final. That night, Noah didn't stay over. Days passed. Then weeks. They didn't break up, not officially, but they didn't really exist together either. They hovered in a painful in-between, where love still pulsed but trust had begun to bleed out. Amara replayed their memories endlessly. The bookstore, the park bench, the way he once looked at her like she was home. She wondered when exactly that look had changed, or if she had imagined it all. Noah, on the other hand, drowned himself in responsibility. Work, family, obligations, anything that allowed him to avoid the growing truth, that he was slowly becoming the very man he never wanted to be, one who sacrificed love for approval. The breaking point came quietly. Amara attended an event alone one evening, standing in a crowded room, surrounded by laughter she couldn't feel. Across the room, she saw Noah, unexpected, unannounced, standing beside a woman she didn't recognize. The way they spoke felt too familiar, too comfortable. Her chest tightened. She didn't storm over. She didn't cause a scene. She simply watched as Noah laughed in a way she hadn't seen in months. Later, she asked him about it. "She's just a colleague," he said quickly. Nothing more. But something inside Amara cracked. It wasn't jealousy, it was clarity. She realized then that she was fighting for a version of Noah that no longer existed. And he was clinging to a version of her that never needed reassurance. They met one last time in the park where he had first asked her to choose him. "I think we're hurting each other," Amara said softly. Noah looked at her, eyes tired, love still present but burdened by regret. "I never meant for this to happen." "I know," she replied. "That's what makes it worse." They didn't scream. They didn't blame. They simply acknowledged what both had been avoiding. Sometimes love isn't destroyed by hatred, but by incompatibility, timing, and fear. When they said goodbye, it wasn't dramatic. No final kiss. No promises to stay friends. Just a long look, heavy with everything they couldn't fix. Amara walked away first, and Noah let her. That night, she cried. Not because she had lost him, but because she had lost the future she thought they were building together. Yet somewhere beneath the pain, a quiet strength began to stir. She didn't know it yet, but this heartbreak was not the end of her story. It was the beginning of her becoming. Heartbreak does not arrive all at once. It settles in slowly, like dust after a collapse, covering everything you once recognized until even familiar places feel foreign. For Amara, the days after Noah felt unreal. She still woke at the same time, still dressed for work, still answered emails and smiled when required. From the outside, she looked functional, normal, fine. Inside, she was unraveling. The silence was the hardest part. No good morning texts. No random voice notes. No one to share the small victories or quiet disappointments with. At night, the emptiness grew louder. She would reach for her phone out of habit, only to remember there was no one waiting on the other end. Sometimes she typed messages she never sent. Other times, she deleted Noah's name entirely, then restored it hours later, unable to let go. She told herself this pain meant the love had been real, and that thought both comforted and destroyed her. Noah tried to move on too, but in a different way. He buried himself in responsibility, just as he always had. Family obligations consumed him. Work filled every waking hour. On paper, his life looked successful, stable, approved. But at night, when the noise faded, Regret sat beside him like an unwelcome companion. He missed Amara's calm strength. Her honesty. The way she challenged him without trying to control him. For the first time, he questioned whether the life he was building was actually his, or one carefully chosen for him by others. But pride is a stubborn thing. Weeks turned into months. And slowly, painfully, Amara began to heal. Not because the hurt disappeared, but because she chose herself. She stopped waiting for closure that would never come. She poured her energy into growth, into ambition she had once postponed for love. She took on projects she had been afraid of. She traveled alone. She learned to sit with herself without distraction. She rediscovered parts of her identity she had softened to fit into someone else's world. And she thrived. What no one tells you about heartbreak is that it changes you permanently. You don't go back to who you were. You become someone new. Stronger. Sharper. More aware of what you will and will not accept. Amara learned that love should not require constant sacrifice of self. That being chosen should not feel like a favor. That compatibility matters just as much as chemistry. 1 year later, she was almost unrecognizable, even to herself. Confident. Independent. Grounded. And then fate, cruel and ironic, intervened. They met again by chance, at a formal event neither had expected the other to attend. When Noah saw her across the room, his breath caught. She looked radiant, not because of her dress or her posture, but because she carried peace. The kind that doesn't seek approval. The kind that knows its worth. When Amara saw Noah, her heart skipped, but only once. The pain didn't return the way she expected. There was no ache, no longing, just a quiet recognition of what had been, and why it could never be again. They spoke politely, carefully. "I'm glad you're doing well," Noah said, and this time, he meant it without regret masking resentment. "I am," Amara replied honestly. "I hope you are too." There was so much he wanted to say. Apologies. Confessions. Regrets that had grown heavier with time. But some words arrived too late. They said goodbye with soft smiles and no promises. And when Amara walked away, she didn't look back. Because she no longer needed to. Later that night, as she stood alone by her window, the city lights reflecting off the glass, Amara finally understood the full truth of her story. Their love had been beautiful. And it had been real. But it had also been a lesson. A lesson in timing. A lesson in boundaries. A lesson in choosing yourself even when love begs you not to. She didn't regret loving Noah. She regretted how long she stayed once she began to disappear. And that realization set her free. Because some love stories aren't meant to last forever. Some are meant to teach you who you are. And that, she realized, was more powerful than any happily ever after. Before you go, please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where they're watching from, because stories like this are shared not just for entertainment, but for healing. Someone out there is learning, just like Amara did, that even when love breaks you, it can also rebuild you stronger than before.